Hello, everyone. Welcome to Astrologer Climate Witness tonight. I had gotten the idea that I should be reading some articles out of the really great magazine, astrology magazine called Mountain Astrologer. I have quite a few copies saved from over the years, and but I couldn't find the particular one that I wanted. I don't have them all, but I did find this one, and again, we're going to cover Capricorn and Pluto in Capricorn, okay? Because that's basically what we're in. At some point, I'll start covering more uh, specific planets in signs and more specific angles and such. But this carries so much weight, and there's so much material from it that I have to talk about it again. Because number one, it's in its last degree of a sign, which is Capricorn. Whenever a planet is in the very last degree of a sign, it really brings on the epitome, the concentration of the energies of that planet in that sign. And that's a long time for a planet to be in a sign from 2008. So that's a lot of built up energy. Lots of things have been occurring, and now we will see the culmination of this. Okay, this article was written in 2017. It's called Capricorn Evolution in the United States. Okay? Again, the magazine is called Mountain Astrologer. In a PBS NewsHour interview last week, former United States Secretary of State Madeleine Albright was commenting on the current administration's handling of the National Security Council when she said, "Disruption is not a bad thing for bureaucracy. Destruction, however, is very dangerous." Had Albright been an astrologer, she might have said, "A little Uranus disruption is okay to shake up Capricorn structures and authority, but Pluto destruction is very dangerous." Is the American bureaucracy being destroyed? Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto entered Capricorn in early 2008, although it spent some time retrograde in Sagittarius before going direct in November in 2008. Pluto will not leave Capricorn until 2024. If you don't remember Pluto changing signs because you were hiking Mount Everest without your cell phone, you might recall some of its effects, which arrived remarkably soon after the ingress into Capricorn. The first thing you might have noticed is that you owed more on your house than it was worth, as the value of houses in the United States collapsed after the mortgage-backed securities market imploded. Soon after the United States mortgage market collapsed, the domino effect liquidated other financial institutions and spread the financial crisis to the global markets. The domino was stopped in the US by government intervention and Federal Reserve. Okay, government interventions, that's not capitalism, people. Just keep that in mind. So all you capitalists who just love the fact that we're a capitalist country, we are not necessarily a full capitalist country. You got saved. Your butts got saved because the government came in like a socialist and helped you. Didn't help many other people, though, just the rich. Capricorn is the 10th sign of the zodiac and represents our social consciousness. It's associated with career and reputation and seeks positions of status and authority. Capricorn and its ruler, Saturn, make up the rules and are for the most part, and are most comfortable in institutional settings where levels of expertise and experience are clearly defined, such as government, banking, universities, and the military. In these places, you are hierarchically defined and have clear rules for moving up the ladder. You know your place, the place of others, and the rules of engagement. Pluto, as destroyer, wasted no time in leveling Capricorn structures. If we dig deeper into the meaning of Pluto, we have to accept that its ultimate purpose is evolution, which is gradual until it develops enough momentum for a big shift that becomes obvious when the planet transits into a new sign. When, in this case, the perceived destruction in the external world of Capricorn. That's the energy we're experiencing, the destruction of that hierarchical energy. Perception is the key here. Pluto didn't destroy the housing market. The housing market was built on an unstable foundation that Pluto revealed by doing what Pluto does, symbolism. The symbolism of Pluto is showing us that why and how this foundation didn't work. It's an awakening, so to speak. Pluto didn't do it. It's just telling us that, hey, we became aware. The veil was lifted. Pluto simply shook the floor. Our consciousness shook the floor, and the house collapsed. This is what the symbolism of Pluto is. The darkness was lifted, so to speak. After the global financial crisis of 2008, a cascade of Pluto and Capricorn situations involving authority and structure arose around the globe, aided by Uranus moving into Aries in 2011 and Saturn moving into Sagittarius in 2015. These situations included the role of government surveillance, the forced removal of authority, the role of non-elected players in global politics, such as groups and corporations, mass human migration, and the composition of nations, such as the attempt to limit immigration of certain groups. Quite intense. The U.S. in particular has struggled since its founding with the role of federal authority versus individual, local, and state authority. Remember, they're not taking sides there. They're just saying this is the big struggle in the United States between central government and state and local government. Okay? Like beauty, the role and reach of authority are often in the eye of the beholder. When we complain about a particular energy, we are often complaining about one polarity of that energy. Stereotypes, for example, are rejected by those receiving the negative side of a stereotype. Positive stereotypes, in contrast, are often embraced. The challenge is to reject all stereotypes, positive and negative, as they are equally unearned. The overreach of authority is labeled authoritarianism, defined by Merriam-Webster as of relating to or favoring a concentration of power in a leader or an elite not constitutionally responsible to the people. I'll read that again. The overreach of authority is labeled authoritarianism, defined by Merriam-Webster as of relating to or favoring a concentration of power in a leader or an elite not constitutionally responsible to the people. It's easy to say we dislike authoritarianism until it enacts a law or a rule that we deem necessary for the benefit of society as a whole. Yet our various personalities have differing viewpoints on when, say that again, yet our various personalities, because each of us has a different inner archetype as to what we view as authority or non-authority or egalitarianism, etc. Everybody has that different. Some of us have very authoritarian personalities, so we kind of like authoritarian stuff. One person's authoritarianism is another person's justice. Capricorn evolution in the United States. The Pluto transit of Capricorn is particularly relevant for the U.S. If we use the signing of the Declaration of Independence as our birthday, it has natal Pluto at 27 degrees Capricorn. People don't have Pluto returns, since the planet takes 248 years to return to its natal position. A planet return is when that planet comes back to its same position it was at when you were born. Every planet has a different length of a cycle. Okay? The moon comes back in 28 days to its position that it was at when you were born. Pluto takes 248 years. 248 years. But the United States will soon turn 248 and will have a Pluto return in 2022 to 2023. See? We just did that. And what was happening? Heavy duty stuff. The Pluto return happened like a few days before the war between Russia and Ukraine. So that's part of what is coming down. As you can see, the decisions the United States made, the conflict in the with its enemies, I could say enemies, I hate to use that word, but um, adversaries and the alliances it's had with its allies all coming into the fore. And now we've been trying to work this out for a while. And as we can see, there's many countries now who are beginning to um, go toward another polarity in the world economic setup. Um, European countries, India, for one, Iran, well, India is not European, but India, Iran, and those, they're starting to work more with Russia. They're still trading with Russia, even though there's sanctions against this. And various entities are moving toward China, still kind of working with Russia, even though they might not like the taste of that. But and yes, the United States hegemony is at risk. Okay, which how did it get that hegemony? How did it get that empire power? Read that book by John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Okay, let me continue. To provide an example of Pluto evolution, slavery existed in the U.S. from 1619 to 1865, 246 years, and few years shy of an entire Pluto cycle. And where was Pluto during the slavery cycle? Pluto started in Taurus, which rules the physical body, property, and assets. Our Pluto in Taurus evolution taught us, hopefully, not to own people. Pluto in Taurus also saw the U.S. develop into the materially prosperous nation it is today. Taurus meaning symbolizing personal resources, okay, what you have. If our Pluto and Taurus cycle taught us about property and assets, what is the Pluto and Capricorn cycle teaching us? The U.S. was founded as a result of a break with authority fostered by strong idealism, as represented by the natal moon in Aquarius. In the birth chart of the United States, the moon is in Aquarius. Yet, at the same time, the country condoned slavery, a clear disconnect between those ideals. After the signing of the Declaration of Independence, it took 89 years, close to an 84-year Uranus cycle, to end slavery, 144 years, close to a 165-year Neptune cycle, to allow women to vote, and 100 years to establish civil rights, because it took 100 years for the Civil War victory and the freedom of the slaves. It took 100 years for them to be able to use that freedom. To the point at which you could actually say that they had it, because before that there was so much intimidation, so much violence against them, that they couldn't really even vote without worry of being killed or something happening, let alone vote about there's many other things. So it took another 100 years for that to sink in the 60s. Okay, it took up until the 1960s for that to really begin to take effect. The victory of Abraham Lincoln freeing the slaves. It took almost another 100 years for that to really start to take effect. In 1776, the United States parted from perceived authoritarianism, but apparently the habit wasn't quite out of our national system. As Pluto returns to its natal position 248 years later, it may represent the culmination of the original Aquarian ideals. In 2015, Pluto at 13 degrees Capricorn opposed the U.S. natal Sun in Cancer. Cancer is about personal consciousness, in contrast to the social consciousness symbolized by Capricorn. Let me talk about the opposition for those who aren't familiar. 13 degrees Capricorn, the opposition of the Sun in Capricorn would mean that the Sun in the Sun opposition to Sun in Cancer. The United States Sun is 13 degrees Cancer. So Pluto at 13 Capricorn is in 180 degrees opposite to the United States Sun in Cancer in 2015. Okay? Cancer is about personal consciousness, in contrast to the social consciousness symbolized by Capricorn. Cancer, associated with mothering and emotions, ultimately wants to belong. As transiting Pluto in Capricorn opposed its natal Sun in Cancer, the U.S. once again debated the issue of who belonged in the country. This is not the first time this discussion has arisen in the United States, a country populated by immigration. Prior to its 222nd return, 222 return in the United States horoscope, Pluto will first hook up with Jupiter and Saturn in 2020 for an enhanced impact in Capricorn. We will have more Capricorn before we have less. And this is again written in 2017, so this is what they're talking about, and that's what we got. 2020 lines up with the next U.S. presidential election. If 2016 was disruptive, 2020 may be the destruction that Madeleine Albright fears. The U.S. may be moving into a different style of government, possibly even different borders, as Capricorn likes to set boundaries. If Pluto does create destruction in the governmental structures of the U.S. and other nations, what might be next? Pluto's next stop. When Pluto leaves Capricorn in 2024, it will move into Aquarius. It will take until 2040 for Pluto to make it to 27 degrees Aquarius, the degree of the United States natal moon. That was the natal position when we had our Declaration of Independence. That day, the natal chart, the moon is in 27 degrees Aquarius. By this time, the full potential of the U.S. moon in Aquarius idealism may reach fruition. Well, they're not taking into consideration as much of the science. They're talking mostly political here, but they're not talking ecological. I wish they had, but so by 2040, how much of our habitat for humans is going to be left? Will the planet be livable? And if we somehow can wrestle some semblance of, pockets of people surviving, hopefully some of those will be able to realize what they're just talking about here. The Aquarian idealism. Instead of hierarchy, we're talking egalitarianism. People are equal, and it's understood deeply within people's bones and not an intellectual exercise. In the 1980s and 1990s, the planets Uranus and Neptune traveled together, first in Sagittarius and then in Capricorn. There's a generation born between 1990 and 1995 that has these two planets conjunct in Capricorn. These individuals are charged with the Herculean task of rebuilding and creating what Pluto in Capricorn is leveling. My daughter missed it by about a year. She was born in 96, so her Uranus had moved on to Aquarius by 1 degree. It was a 1 degree Aquarius. Uranus and Neptune conjunct in Capricorn created disruptions, but also idealizations of the structures of society. Idealizations, the Neptune and Capricorn. Yeah. This group of youngsters experienced several societal and economic disruptions. The dot-com bubble, the Asian financial crisis, the rise of non-state regimes, ISIS, 9/11, and then a global financial crisis. Hints of a Pluto in Aquarius abound in such things as the rise of handheld technologies, the breakdown of strict gender roles, crowdfunding, and group consciousness through social media. While Pluto may change signs with a great show of drama, energies generally don't change overnight. Aquarius is already with us. Astrologers are often associated with predictions of doom and gloom, but doom and gloom are not truly the outcome of any astrological aspect. Astrology is about cycles. How any energy manifests is dependent upon what has occurred in all the prior concurrent cycles of our lives. In other words, we reap what we sow. While former U.S. Secretary of State Albright fears the destruction of government, protocol, and maybe government itself, she may not be noticing the trends of the future. Do we really want to hang on to systems that have not evolved? Do we hang on simply out of habit and training? Letting go is not easy and is often forced upon us from the outside, and that outside force is symbolized by Pluto, whose actions will bring us to the necessary regeneration. I don't know that we're going to get to the regeneration. Not with the ecological breakdown that's going to be happening. It's really hard for me to see. Okay, so the reason I don't see it is because of this. Let me read the next article. I know exactly what I'm going to read. If I can get it. I hope I sent it to myself. Let's see. I know where to get it if I didn't send it to myself. Oh, let me see. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. No, I think it was. Huh, okay, I know where to get it. Hold on. Gotta progress the moon on. Oh, no, not that one. Okay, here. Um, 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 um. This article is a climate article, and it is found it on one of my Facebook groups, methane group. Okay. Um, if anybody takes up the suggestion to look for some of these groups, like I said, the uh, methane news, is that what it is really? Yeah, methane news group. If you decide to go there and try to join, let me know. Be interesting. Okie dokie. Um, that one wasn't it, was it? No. Hmm. Huh, that's weird. I swear it was in here. Oh my gosh. Oh, let me see. Maybe it was this top one. I didn't think I was going to do two articles. Sorry. I should have looked it up. No, that's not it. But maybe it's on this other group. I don't think so. Well, no, no, no. Wow, they added so many articles. Oh, they were really slow, much slower before all these new articles. Oh my gosh, it was right here. Okay, I got it. Okay. Climate Code Red Analysis and Sea Level Rise. Okay, here we go. It's from Counterpunch, actually, but they have it on here on the Methane News Group. Climate Code Red, a very thorough and well respected source on climate change, global warming, recently issued a three-part study on where things stand with the climate system via looking through the rearview mirror at 2022 and reflecting that charred image into the future. Faster, Higher, Hotter, What We Learned About Climate System in 2022 by David Spratt, Research Director, Breakthrough National Center for Climate Restoration, February 20, 2023. For starters, several aspects of global warming are at an all-time high. For example, coal use is at an all-time high. They try to make people think, they're doing something. Here's the truth. And not surprisingly, all three of the major greenhouse gases, CO2, CH4, methane, and N2O, which is nitrous oxide, hit record highs in 2022. According to the Global Carbon Project, carbon emissions from fossil fuels hit a new record of 37.5 billion tons. Topping off these all-time records, the International Energy Agency expects fossil fuel emissions to possibly peak in 2025, but remain at a high plateau at a high level for a decade or more, with no significant decline expected in the foreseeable future. Good luck with net zero. Therefore, It comes as no surprise. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change assessments, there is no longer a credible path to holding warming below 1.5 C without massive immediate cooling interventions, um, you know, um, sprinkling, stuff over the Arctic and all that good stuff, right? Okay. Geoengineering, which are not on any policymaker's making agenda. Okay, let me read that again. There is no longer a credible path to holding warming below 1.5 C without massive immediate cooling interventions, which are not on any policymaking agendas. Moreover, the experts quoted in the Code Red study believe anything less than 1.5 C is already out of reach. Not only is the 1.5 target unachievable, but it's unachievable regardless of almost any foreseeable mitigation efforts. This fact is also emphasized by a UK publication, The Economist, which discussed the lag effect of greenhouse gases, to wit, but greenhouse gas emissions do not, I'm going to say, quote, but greenhouse gas emissions do not cause an instantaneous rise in global temperatures, and neither does cutting them result in instantaneous cooling. Instead, it will take decades for today's policy efforts to result in measurable impacts on global temperature. Source: emissions slash today won't slow warming until mid-century. The Economist, July 11, 2022. The Economist article dovetails with the opinions of James Hansen, Earth Institute, Columbia University, who was one of the planet's leading authorities on global warming. Global warming of at least 2°C is now baked into the Earth's future. Code Red goes on to remind people that according to the paleoclimate evidence, the last time CO2 levels were similar to today's with temperature at 1.2 C and up to 3 C, sea levels fluctuated by 20 to 40 meters, as equivalent to 65 to 130 feet higher. Of course, this is a frightening number that readers prefer to gloss over or forget, but so sorry, it's factual. It happened and could happen again. Although numbers of 65 to 130 feet won't occur during the current generation, it'll take much longer. Nevertheless, we're not worried about 65 feet. It's only the first few feet that'll sufficiently flood the world's largest coastal cities, like Mumbai and Miami. By the time 65 feet rolls around, who knows what'll be happening? See, get it? It's only a few feet that really matter. Code Red claims that even sharp reductions in emissions will not be enough to avoid 2C or higher temperatures because of record-breaking fossil fuel forecasts. Yep, they're forecasting more and more and more. According to Will Steffen, Executive Director of the Australian National University Climate Change Institute, it's a mistake to assume we can even stabilize at 2C. Rather, it's a signpost on a road to a hotter planet. Moreover, when projections in late 2021 showed future warming of around 2.7 C, Potsdam Institute Director Johan Rockström said, I barely even want to talk about 2.7 C. If we go beyond 2C, it's very likely that we have caused so many tipping points that you have probably added another degree just through self-reinforcing changes. Self-reinforcing, meaning the planet's doing it itself at that point, releasing these gases. And that's without even talking about extreme events. Of equal concern, Hans Joachim Schollenhuber, founding director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, quote, if the climate system tipping elements interact and cascade develop, then the heating could become independent. Have nothing to do with us, it'll take on a life of its own from the planet. Self-sustaining, in other words, at 2C. Whether that is the case is perhaps the most important question in science right now, because it would mean the end of our civilization. Not just the end of civilization, but like extinction. They're going to get to that, I bet. Those statements are from climate analysts that are widely considered to be at the top of the class and should not be taken lightly. Frankly, it's a fair statement that world leaders and the public have no idea how far along the global warming threat has progressed, especially since the start of the 21st century. After all, according to the Institute for European Environmental Policy, 1/2 of all greenhouse gases in the atmosphere since 1750 have been emitted over the past 30 years alone. I'm going to read that again. After all, according to the Institute for European Environmental Policy, 1/2 of all greenhouse gases in the atmosphere since 1750 have been emitted over the past 30 years alone. Early stage evidence of its impact is easily identified. For example, according to NASA, Antarctic and Greenland combined lost 82 billion tons of ice mass on average per year during the 90s versus 475 billion tons per year during the 2010s. That's an extraordinary statement of fact, and it's the fuel behind sea level rise, and it is expanding in short order, exponentially meaning. According to the study, permafrost across the Arctic is beginning to irreversibly thaw and release carbon dioxide and methane. Alas, we're not even at 1.5 yet. It's releasing already, is their point, and we're not even at 1.5. The study discusses the status of the world's major glaciers. All of them are at various stages, pointing toward tipping points that could cascade ice sheets and glaciers much more rapidly than any climate models currently indicate, to wit. Events at both poles are not properly incorporated into the current climate models. The evidence suggests that sea level rises this century will be greater than currently considered feasible by policymakers. Based upon evidence from climate history, the current global average temperature increase is enough for 5 to 10 meters, 16 to 33 feet of sea level rise in the longer term, inundating small island states, agriculturally rich alluvial deltas, and vulnerable coastal cities. This article covers the first two parts of Climate Code Red's three-part series. The third will be covered later. Sea level warnings. Separate from and coincident with the Climate Code Red article, according to several recent studies on sea level, the time available to prepare for increased exposure to flooding may be considerably less than assumed to date. Analysis by Dutch researchers Ronald Verneman and, oh gosh, I can't say that guy's name, sorry. Alyosha Hoosier? I don't know. Source. Worst impacts of sea level rise will hit earlier than expected. American Geophysical Union, January 24, 2023. New studies have concluded ice sheets that threaten to expand oceans will likely crumble with another 0.5 C increase in global warming. Ice sheets are fragile in ways not previously understood. And they give a source here. The studies found flaws in prior research because of misinterpretation of satellite data and inaccurate resources regarding some underlying countries. As a result of new calculations, quote, the number of people threatened by sea level rise has been underestimated by tens of millions. A study by Hyun-Young Park, Fabian, there's a lot there. Future sea level projections with a coupled atmosphere ocean ice sheet model. Nature Communications, February 14, 2023, concluded, quote, our model has a threshold between 1.5 C and 2 C of warming, with 1.8 as a best estimate for acceleration of ice loss and sea level rise. The Parks Scholzer study claims that 1.8 brings on runaway disintegration of ice sheets. This is the first known study of this kind to correlate a specific global temperature increase with a more rapid acceleration of ice loss. It, therefore, begs the question of how soon 1.8 hits. For example, according to the International Energy Agency, if all the pledges made by the countries COP26 in Glasgow, November 21, were met, global temperatures would hold to 1.8. Okay, yeah, conveniently. 120 countries pledged at Glasgow, net zero by 2050. But as is always true with pledges, implementation is all that counts. And they're not doing that. However, even if the 120 countries meet Glasgow commitments, according to the new research, the runaway disintegration of ice sheets still starts at 1.8 Celsius. This brings forth the report card for COP26 as of October 22, which is not necessarily encouraging. Progress made on COP26 commitments since Glasgow is mixed at best. But to be fair, countries and others often save up their exciting announcements for major international moments. Hopefully, we are in for some nice surprises when world leaders gather in Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt, for COP27. The world will be watching carefully to see if countries, companies, and cities back up their commitments with real action. By following by the following month, November 22, COP27 deflated all expectations. Experts on climate change give UN-sponsored COP27 an F grade, a collective failure, according to The Lancet, which is the world's highest impact academic journal. Therefore, if countries are enthusiastically involved in commitments to limit/cut emissions, the consequences are found far afield. For example, Thwaites Glacier in West Antarctica, the world's most iconic image of global warming. According to Ted Schambos, senior research scientist, ESOC, University of Colorado, each visit underscores how fast Thwaites is changing. Seeing this huge ice shelf moving towards you at about a mile every year is unsettling. And all by itself, this one glacier is big enough to impact sea level rise significantly. Scambos, head of the International Thwaites Glacier collaboration funded by the US and UK to a tune of $50 million. How many glaciers of the world have funds dedicated to specific research? And what does this imply about shaky status of Thwaites, which continues to alarm scientists? Two new studies which commentary on Thwaites are found in Nature, February 15th, 2023. Models of how the West Antarctic ice sheet and glaciers flow respond to climate change. Okay, let me start again. Models of how the West Antarctic ice sheet and glacier flow respond to climate change are missing some important details. Incorporating these insights should clarify how and why the ice will change in the future. And they give a source here. Okay. Thwaites is key to future sea level rise because it is massive and increasingly unstable. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change predicts that sea level rise will probably rise between 38 and 77 centimeters, or 1.3 feet to 2.6 feet by 2100. But collapsing or melting some of the ice sheets on Greenland and Antarctic could theoretically contribute an additional meter, 3.3 feet, which can only be categorized as disastrous for 8 of the top 10 largest cities in the world, which are coastal. Thwaites Glacier is a fast-moving block of ice in the size of Florida in the West Antarctic. Satellite studies have shown that its grounding line, where ice attached to bedrock transitions to ice floating in the sea, has shifted 14 kilometers, 8.7 miles, inland since the late 90s, and some parts of it are retreating as fast as 0.75 miles per year. What's moving Thwaites ice sheet? Warm ocean water is melting the underside because of the climate change, which has shifted wind patterns in the region, bringing warm ocean water to West Antarctica that was not there before. The water temperatures below Thwaites ice shelf are at about 1.5 C above freezing point. Researchers achieved the closest look ever at the underside of Thwaites Glacier, as well as the first ever glimpse at the spot where the ice meets the land. Prior field research indicated that giant fractures in the floating ice of Thwaites could shatter part of the shelf within 5 years. Source: giant cracks push imperiled Antarctic glacier closer to collapse. Nature, December 14, 2021. This would open an avenue for a much faster flow of glacier ice on land into the ocean, contributing to sea level rise. Already, Thwaites accounts for 4% of sea level rise. If Thwaites' eastern ice shelf collapses, ice in this region could flow up to 3 times faster into the sea, Petit says, or Pettit, I think. And if the glacier were to collapse completely, it would raise sea levels by 65 centimeters, 2 feet. Aaron Pettit, glaciologist at Oregon State University. Thwaites flows off Antarctic continent into the Southern Ocean. At 120 kilometers, 75 miles across, it is the world's widest glacier. Across about 2/3 of that expanse, ice flows relatively quickly into the ocean. The remaining 1/3 is the eastern ice shelf, where ice had been flowing more slowly. In part, that's because the ice grinds to a halt when it reaches an underwater mountain about 40 kilometers offshore. The submerged mountain holds back the ice flow like a cork in a bottle. Earlier this year, members of Thwaites Collaboration reported that the glacier is becoming unstuck from that mountain, causing cracking and fracturing across other parts of the ice shelf. Based upon what scientists observed at Thwaites, it's amazing that the metaphor, like a cork in a bottle, describes what may be holding back much more rapid breakup of one of the world's largest, most menacing glaciers. Meantime, sea level researchers deal with a target that moves up, never down, with each passing year. What'll stop it? And this is by Robert Hunziker. Hunziker. He's written a lot of good stuff. Okay, folks, I know this has been pretty long, but again, climate code red analysis and sea level rise from the site Counterpunch, or you could even get it. Actually, I found this not on the methane news group. It was prepping for near-term human extinction group, which is started by the same guy pretty much. But remember, when you join these groups, you're asked certain questions. You go there to learn, okay? Not to argue. I mean, if you have a decent amount of knowledge and there's a little debate on some details, yes. Okay, but okay. I'll just leave it at that. But okay. So it's a lot of work to read all that. I hope you felt like you got something out of this. I showed the Pluto in Capricorn again from the first article, and then I show the breakdown of the Earth systems, Capricorn, not just the civilizational structures, but really, I mean, Capricorn is an Earth sign, so it still rules the structures and systems of the Earth too. That's my natural astrology that I am working on presenting and studying. Okay, the association is the same. Societal systems and Earth systems, Capricorn. Okay, so all of this is hard to take. I get that. But sometimes, it's better to know and be able to prepare mentally and emotionally. There's some benefit in preparing physically, preparing your home for what's to come in the next few years. I'm doing things like that. Looking into, the fire bricks. I haven't really gotten any yet, but by spring, I hope to have fire bricks to make my pit. And I'm doing that. I mean, it's not to, when I say I'm doing those things, I'm not doing them necessarily to be able to stop climate change or biodiversity loss. Sure, that's the kind of thing that would help if everybody in the world did it. But what I'm doing is preparing for the high cost of gas, cooking gas, etc. And not because they're gonna ban gas. I've already got my house and my gas set up. It's just that I won't have to spend. Well, all right, here's an example. When we used to buy our 40 pound gas tank, my husband said it was $17. I think it was even less than that years back. He just paid $32 for it. Okay, yes, we have a gas stove. But again, I heat my house mostly with a wood stove, and I raise my bread by the wood stove. Eventually, someday, I could cook on my wood stove too. It's very flat on top. I haven't really tried it much yet, but I could probably do that. It's not a big stove. I wish it was bigger because then it could get hotter. Okay, but we'll see. And I do have a huge, I guess maybe actually that would be a Dutch oven. It's an iron kettle that's like a big stew pot with cover. And I could put that right in the fire and cook something in it. I just haven't tried it yet. That might be my next project soon. And no, I didn't plant my seeds, my seedling my starters yet, my tomatoes and zucchini and everything. Again, I wanted to do it well after the new moon in Pisces, and then when the moon was in Taurus, and I missed it because I was mopping floors and doing other housework yesterday, and I had to go to work. But when the moon enters Cancer, I will go ahead and put my seeds in. That's Wednesday. So I have to, make time for it because I don't want to go past Wednesday. Uh, Water sign, Sun in Pisces, Moon in Cancer should be a good way to start my seeds. Um, I have tomatoes, zucchini, pumpkins, and I forgot to buy my peppers. So within the next couple of days, I got to get to Agway and buy my heirloom pepper seeds because I use all heirloom. I'm not a fantastically award-winning gardener. I need to get better, especially after the end of July. I don't weed very well, but I really have to, at least I know how much work it really, really takes. That's the point. It does take consistency, discipline to really reap a big harvest. I get some food and everything, but I could probably do better if I was a little more disciplined at some point. I'm great at starting. I get out there and I see my little seedlings come up and I get excited. If you'd have told me that in my 20s or 30s, I would have said, yeah, right. But yeah, I get excited. And, but there's lots of different ways people can handle this. If gardening's not your thing, you know, if you're in an area where you can form a group, your strength might be something else. And then you share, you know, somebody else might share gardening or share the food with you if you're providing some other, maybe you like to crochet. I don't know. And then you can make them clothes. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm saying, start preparing and practicing and thinking in these terms now, so that as things start to change drastically, you'll at least have somewhat of a leg up. That's it. Okay, I got to be quiet now. Thank you for coming to watch Astrology Climate Witness tonight, and I hope you have a great week. This is Sunday, by the way, February 25th, 2023, and enjoy your week. Okay, bye bye.